Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Carlsen has just played A takes b5 here, and Radjabov answered with the correct move. We just saw why, with A takes b5. And now Carlsen continued with C takes d4, electing to resolve the central tension, which is a committal decision that could even be criticized because it makes black's defensive task easier. However, white is somewhat ahead in development and black is still some moves away from castling, so it can be argued that opening the position is the correct thing to do. Fritz preferred bishop g5 here, but it's hard to see why, other than to maintain the central tension, and it's difficult to call the position anything but equal after bishop e7, bishop takes d5, rook takes d5, bishop takes e7, and knight takes e7. So c takes d4, c takes d4, and now knight b d2. Carlsen assesses it as more important to get the knight into the game before developing his dark squared bishop. The drawback of this move is that it allows knight f4, gaining a tempo on the queen, and this forces queen d1. If queen e1, then knight b4 is an annoying move. And here Radjabov went slightly awry with knight b4, and she played anyway. And you know, it's easy to understand his thinking. He wants to attack the d3 pawn with his two knights, and you know, give white some problems to solve, because he's more or less forced to play knight b3 here in order to defend d3 and the other threats. But after that, Radjabov will be able to play bishop takes e4, and you know, then land a knight in d3, which are the kind of small advantages that can lead to a winning position in the hands of a grandmaster. One of the most notable things about talented players is their ability to not only notice but also exploit mistakes made by their opponents. Carlsen is superb at this, and he's able to prove with his subsequent play that Radjabov has overstretched here and been too ambitious right out of the opening, when he should have been focusing on the basics and simply trying to get castled with a move like knight g6, instead of, you know, trying to make a game of it and create initiative already. So knight b3 was indeed Carlsen's response, and it's important to note here that he shouldn't play bishop takes b7, or he's simply losing a pawn on d3 after queen takes b7, and there's no way to defend this pawn again. So bishop takes e4 and d takes e4, and black has succeeded in damaging the white pawns, and you know, he's created a passed pawn of his own, and he's enabled a powerful move knight d3. His rook is well placed, his queen is pretty well placed, and you know, and surely it would feel that this is enough for an advantage. And you know, I mean, black's main goal is equalization, but you would think that that has easily been attained here. The truth, though, is that it's not, and doubled pawns, though structurally weak, can sometimes give dynamic play, and having them doubled in the center is the best place that they can be. And Carlsen's judgment proves excellent. After knight b3, this move here, his c1 bishop gains activity without even moving, the same way that his rook did, in that it's attacking the f4 knight. So Radjabov presses it on forward with knight fd3, which he has to do if he wants to maintain the d4 pawn. If he retreats the knight, then the two white knights and the queen are attacking d4, so it's going to fall. And this is another effect of the capture d takes e4. It opens the d file for this pressure. So after knight fd3, next came bishop g5, which develops with tempo because the d8 rook is attacked, and it's simple but very effective. And the rook has to stay on the back rank, or rook a8 check is going to be extremely dangerous. And this means that white will pick up the d4 pawn and install a strong knight on the ideal d4 square. Rook c8 is what Radjabov played, and this makes the most sense. We can have a quick look at why alternatives are worse. Let's say he plays rook d7, hoping for maybe bishop e7, takes. Doesn't look very nice, but there's far bigger problems than that. Rook a8 check, and black has to give up the queen here in order to not get mated. There's no squares for the king, so rook d8 and rook takes d8 check. The only move is for the queen to take, and then the bishop takes the queen. It's obviously a win. But why not, for example, bishop e7, you might ask. This breaks the attack on the rook, and it gives up castling rights after bishop takes e7, king takes e7. But is that such a bad thing? At least black can maintain the d4 pawn this way, but there are serious problems for black in this line too. After bishop takes e7, king takes e7, there's a strong line for white, which begins with a key move. If you want to try and spot it, then stop the video now. Queen d2 is the move. Very well spotted if you found it. However, it's not enough to find the move. See if you can find the threat that this creates. The amazing threat is knight c1. And how does black defend this d3 knight? The answer is that he can't, and he can't move it without dropping the knight on b4, thanks to the queen being here on d2. So that's going to win a piece at least. And all of these problems are stemming from the fact that black is overextended, and it shows great foresight and understanding that Carlsen is able to exploit such play with seemingly standard developing moves like bishop g5. He's seen all of this presumably and understands the problems that it creates and the advantage that it generates for him. So rook c8 is what Radjabov played. So this allows knight f takes d4, which, as I said, gets the knight to a great central square. And it's tempting to take with the other knight, considering that it's on b3, and that's less central than f3. But Carlsen has judged that there's more activity on the queen side, and thus the knight should stay on b3. In particular, it will have some pressure against the bishop when it develops to c5, which is the only reasonable square that it can go to. So knight takes b2 from Radjabov, which is the correct move, although one still can't help but feel that he's playing with fire, continuing for activity whilst he's still uncastled. The other option is knight takes e5, but this is weaker. Why relieve white of the weakness of his double pawns when you can, in theory, attack them later and win a different pawn in the meantime and create a pass pawn of your own, this b pawn here, by playing knight takes b2 instead? And white would just be better here after rook a5, but growing pressure on b5. So knight takes b2 anyway. This attacks the queen, and e2 is the right square, because this attacks not only the b2 knight, but also the weak b5 pawn, which the knight here is attacking. And this forces knight c4 if black wants to hold on to both of them. But now comes rook f c1, which is another very nice and accurate move from Carlsen, who's starting to gain a good edge in the position. Again, if you want to try and work out the threat, then stop the video now. The idea here with this move, rook c1, is to play knight takes b5. It's removing the support of the knight here on c4, and after the queen takes, knight a5 can be played, attacking the knight again. It can't move. Sorry, the queen can't move. No, sorry, the knight can't move. Because if it does, the queen will be hanging here to the other queen, so that's going to win the material back. And you know, it's end up with a superior position and a winning game. And white is making full use of his superior development here. And Radjabov now went slightly wrong again, perhaps having missed a threat with bishop c5. So Carlsen continued with knight takes b5, removing the support of the c4 knight, as I said. And now, because bishop c5 is threatening simply to take on c4, and Radjabov was content to finally get castled here, but this was an outright blunder. Better was bishop takes f2 check, queen takes f2, and queen takes b5. Although remarkably, white is winning a piece after queen e2 here, and castling for black. If instead, say, queen b6 check, bishop e3, and there's no knight takes e3 because of rook takes c8 check, and a disaster on the back rank. So castling is best, but then will come knight d4 and stacks the queen. The queen is tied to defending the knight, so queen c5 is forced. If instead queen takes e5, with the idea that after rook takes c4, rook takes c4, queen takes c4, there's queen takes g5, the knight drops at the end, so it's no good. It's still completely winning for white. So queen c5 would be the right move, but now comes bishop e3, which totally ties black in knots. Knight f5 is a huge threat, with knight d6 coming next, winning a piece because it's forking this knight here with the rook. And you know, for example, say rook fd8, black's got nothing better anyway. Now knight f5 can be played. This covers an attack on the queen, and it can't be taken, or the queen is lost. And knight e7 check is threatened to win the rook, and also threatened as rook takes c4, and you know, thus black is losing a piece and the game eventually. So it's great vision from Carlsen. Another line that might have been considered instead of castling was queen takes b5, with the idea that if white captures on c4, then bishop takes f2 check will win back the material. But this is faulty in a couple of ways. Firstly, that white will have rook a8 check at the end, you know, when the smoke clears. But also that he doesn't even have to wait for then. He can simply play rook a5 here and is winning a piece because the queen can no longer maintain the support of the c4 knight. Okay, so back to the game continuation. Radjabov castled. So why is this a blunder? The answer is knight takes c5, and white is completely winning. And to make matters worse, Radjabov blundered here with knight takes e5, and he's just crumbling when faced with the onslaught, although he was lost already. Better was rook takes c5, although white is still easily winning after bishop e7, threatening to win the exchange. Well, in fact, winning the exchange. Queen takes b5, bishop takes c5, queen takes c5, queen takes c4, and white's a pawn and the exchange up, so it's obviously a win. Knight takes e5 is what Radjabov played, and a very nice final move from Carlsen. Oops, it's bishop e7 is the last move, and it crowns the positional play with tactics. And Radjabov had had enough here at this point and just threw in the towel, making the game a miniature as it was the 25th move. And the point of this move, bishop e7, the idea, you know, it's not only defending the c5 knight, but it also poses black some serious problems He can't make any threats here as the position stands, so where is he going to put his rook? The only square that doesn't lose the exchange straight away is e8, but next comes knight d6 and the exchange is still lost, no matter what is played now. It's losing. Rook takes c5 doesn't work. Rook takes e7 doesn't work. Nothing. So black's losing material, and it will be an obviously winning game for white. So it was a great game from Carlsen, who once again dismantled one of the best players in the world quickly, efficiently and flawlessly. Radjabov actually has a reputation as being difficult to beat, but he could be forgiven for thinking otherwise looking at this game. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.